In this video, I'm going to explain how the number of times you use a reusable water bottle in fact reduces its impact, its global warming potential, or its environmental impact. I'm also going to explain what the break-even number means when we say that it takes, say, 30 uses to become more eco-friendly or have a lower global warming potential than a single-use bottle. So let's start by looking at how the number of times a bottle is used reduces its global warming potential. So on the y-axis here, you can see the number of times the bottle is used, and the x-axis here, you can see the global warming potential. So the global warming potential is a metric that is used across most of the life cycle analysis studies, and it's measured usually in grams or kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent. So I'm not going to dig into the details of that, but you're going to hear global warming potential or climate change potential or CO2 equivalent. That is essentially the metric used to measure the environmental impact of a water bottle. And what's important here to take away is that you can see by the number of times it's used, the impact goes down, the global warming potential reduces. And the first few times it's used, you can see how big of a drop the impact is, and then it kind of levels out a bit. The reason behind that is because the biggest impact of water bottles is in the production phase, so creating them. So here are the three main pieces or the phases of a life cycle analysis for water bottles: the production, the use, and the post-use, often referred to as post-life or disposal. And the production phase, as I mentioned, has the biggest impact in comparison to use and post-use. So this diagram is quite a bit more detailed, and you can see that this area here is all production. You can see how much goes into that, and here is use, and then here is end of life. So the reason why production has such a big impact compared to use and end of life is because the resources that go into the bottle, the manufacturing of the bottle, the packaging, the delivery to the marketplace, storage, etc., all of that goes into the production phase. The use phase is going to be a little bit of transportation, washing and refilling the water bottle, and if you're refrigerating it. And then end of life, there will be different scenarios, whether it gets recycled, goes to landfill, etc. So essentially, every time the water bottle is used, this whole production phase doesn't have to happen again. You're reusing the bottle, so you're cutting this out, but you still will have the use and the end of life factored in. So you can think of this being basically cutting the production phase in half, and then in half again, and half again, and half again. And so you're never going to get it to zero, but it will get lower, and there will always be a certain impact that's associated with the using and the end of life of that water bottle. So it's never going to go quite to zero. One way to think of this could be if you were using a new bottle every time, then you would essentially have this level of global warming potential, this level of impact, versus if you're using one bottle over time. And so you can see the difference between the two is quite significant. Now, let's talk about break-even points and comparing single-use plastic water bottles with reusable plastic water bottles. So this is a graph from one study that compared reusables in aluminum type, plastic type, and steel. So what we can see here is similar to the graph we were looking at before. We have the global warming potential, also known as the climate change score, and you can see here again our metric, kilograms of CO2 equivalent on the y-axis, and then the number of uses on the x-axis. And we can see the number of times that the water bottle is used, the lower its global warming potential gets, the lower the impact is. And similarly to the other chart, we can see after the first few uses, we see a big drop, and then it starts to plateau once you get up to, in this case, they've gone out to 1,000 uses. Now, what's helpful for us here is that they've compared it to this Nestle EcoShape bottle, which is essentially a lower plastic version of a single-use water bottle. And this is what the global warming potential is for that single plastic bottle here. So it's relatively low because the production for this, it has less materials and therefore has a lower global warming potential score. So you can see that after about 10 uses, looks like maybe 11 or 12 uses, the impact of the single-use water bottle is going to be about the same as the reusables. So what this study and what this chart tells us is basically after about 11 or 12 uses of that reusable water bottle, it's global warming potential is going to be equivalent to 1 single-use water bottle. So let's look at a couple of different scenarios here. How about displacing single-use water bottles? So in reality, it's likely that you're going to be reusing a water bottle, refilling it, say, 10 times over the course of a few days. But if you didn't have that water bottle, you would probably be using a single-use water bottle each time instead. So in that case, we would have to account for the second water bottle, the third single-use water bottle, the fourth single-use water bottle, and so on. So if we're actually comparing it this way, where every time you need 500 milliliters of water, half a liter, then you're going to either grab a single-use water bottle or you're going to reuse your reusable water bottle. In this case, after only about 2 liters or 4 500 milliliter servings, they're going to break even. So you're talking about comparing grabbing a new off-the-shelf single-use bottle versus reusing your reusable bottle is really only going to take about 4 uses. Now, these numbers are not exact. These are extrapolations to prove the point. But the main takeaway here, which is important, is that if you're reusing rather than having to get a new single-use water bottle, the number of times for it to break even are actually going to be much lower than the one to many comparison that we saw before. So how about reusing the single-use water bottle? Now, this isn't necessarily advised, but some people do this, and just to see the trajectory here, it is an interesting point. So if you were to, instead of grabbing a new single-use water bottle every time, you were to actually refill that a couple of times, say 3 times or 10 times, you see that just like the reusables, the impact of that single use is going to drop. So it's interesting to see here, if you reuse that single water bottle even just a few times, then you'd have to compare that to about 30 uses of one of the reusable water bottles. And other things that we could look at here are whether or not the bottle gets recycled or how much recycled material is in it, etc. So all those things will also further drop that single-use bottle's global warming potential, but would also drop a reusable water bottle's impact as well. For example, if the aluminum bottle or the steel bottle or even the plastic bottle were made from 100% recycled material, that would significantly drop the global warming potential of it. So in terms of just how many times you have to use a reusable water bottle to have a lower global warming potential, lower impact than single-use water bottles, glass falls somewhere in this area. It has the lower production cost, so it has a lower break-even point, and aluminum, plastic, and steel are more in this range. Of course, every product is going to vary based on the different type of production impact that it has and the transportation and what's required for use, etc.